Okay, let's start this. This show is a show that I've always wanted to put together. It's a student work that studied under myself. I'm Nolan Preece, of course. Maybe you already know that, maybe you don't. Anyway, it's a cross-section of many of the things the Chemigram can do. Now, Matt, the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, what is a Chemigram? A Chemigram is a process developed by Pierre Cordier back in 1956. And he coined the term chemigram because he was making them using a resist on photographic paper that's light sensitive, that has silver in it. And what he was doing was he was applying a different resist like paint, wax, varnish to the surface of the photo paper, and it would keep the solutions from attacking the silver in the paper at varying times, and it would create these patterns, and he could figure out how to control it from there. So anyway, I was fortunate to meet Pierre Cordier in New York City. I think it was 2016, and he was getting pretty old at that time, but it was really a pleasure to meet him. And through the years, I communicated with him quite a bit, but he started this whole thing, and I wanted to try to continue it. And so what I came up with was the use of acrylic floor finish as the resist that you put on the photo paper. And what I discovered after a few trial and error, I'm one of those people that want to try everything out and see what's going to work. So I had a lot of copious amount of old photo paper taken around the house, and so I decided to try some of the future floor finish that we've been using to cover our copper plates upstairs when I was doing the printmaking workshops. And I was really surprised at what happened, and it's sort of my invention, I guess, to use future floor finish. I call it my own, but I'm not so sure there's not somebody else out there dabbling in it. But I took it to the max, and I taught it in many of my classes. In fact, most all of these pieces have something to do with the floor finish. There are a few that have the quality we call using a hard resist, which is placing paint on the photo paper and then lightly scribing through that layer of paint to let the chemistry get into the scribing. What we use to process it, and that's what makes Chemigram unique, is it's an equal amount of photography, printmaking, and painting. So what we are doing is we're applying a resist to the photo paper, which is the printmaking aspect of the process. We can use different toners and that kind of thing on the photo paper, or we can scan it in and take it to the computer, which some of these are that way. And we can, from that, we can adjust the color in many different ways. And the photography aspect of it is you always have to have a developer and a fixer, because fixer removes the silver halides in the silver paper from the paper, leaving you with a white, say a white background, which is not going to have any silver in it any longer. And the developer aspect of it is it will turn the photo paper black. If you just put developer on photo paper, it will turn black, turning the silver halides into metallic silver in situ in the paper. So by using these two in a binary way, cycling, and I remember back in the old days, they said, never take your photograph out of fixer and put it into the developer, you know. Well, we break all the rules, but we make chemigrams. We take and we cycle it back and forth as many cycles as we can get out of it, so that it will render all these nice, luscious textures and even colors that you can see in some of these images. What I'd like to do is take you around a little bit. This is the big room, but talk about just a few of them in here, and then maybe go down the hall and talk a little bit as we go down to the other. I think everybody pretty much has a piece in here was within my classes. We can start over in the corner here with one of my pieces. This particular paper was an old luminous paper. The oldest paper I've used to make a chemigram was 1953 Kodak Medalist, which they had done something to the papers back then to give this really rich reddish and crimson colors. And by doing this cycling back and forth between developer and fixer, I was getting these lush colors, but it didn't happen after 1970 with the Medalist papers. I don't know, they were putting cadmium in, and somebody told me they were putting cadmium in the photo papers back then. So the Chemigram can give you a whole range of different, just playing with it, as many of these students have done, to get these luscious images. It has kind of markings of its own. It takes on a quality all its own, the Chemigram does. But the red dots back here it's what we call a hard resist. It's MSA, mineral spirits acrylic, that's used to put a varnish on oil paintings or acrylics. And all I did was take a dropper and drop drip, 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 drip. But the luminose paper that back in the old days when I was a student at Utah State back in, when was that, 1972 or something. Luminose paper was a cheap student grade paper that we'd get just to play with. And they made this paper that had a range of colors, and the second it hit the fixer, it would turn that color. So I dripped some on it and I put it in the fixer first, and the dots all went red. And I really like that piece just for the dots.
Very red.
Yeah, very red.
Consistent red.
Yeah. There's a variety of ways students are working. They can go towards a representational style, which you might try to make a tree or a rock or a sky or something like that, which the general public can recognize, but it is particularly good at rendering an abstraction. So if you can take it to the point where you're making landscapes or something like that out of it, you've probably gone a little bit outside of the Chemigram realm and into Photoshop and the computer. And I've done a lot of that. That's kind of where I've taken it to that point. But I've also made a lot of nice abstractions. I think they're okay. But anyway, are there any questions up to this point right now? Yeah, then did I explain it thoroughly what this process is? Yeah.
Well, I was wondering how she got the trees. You said you can scratch something into it and the chemicals come through.
Okay, Mike made this, didn't he? And I think he used tape. Here, didn't he? Tape. Now, tape is a resist. In other words, you put tape on the photo paper and the chemicals creep underneath it, and it sinks through it, and it will create these rich textures. You can see that. Now, there's a lot of serendipity in this work because you're relying on the accident about 50% of the time.
Wow.
But you can see where he's played with some of the acrylic floor finish out here, just brushing it on. And this is a good example of a representational piece where you recognize some trees and the moon and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but we have a lot of abstractions in here. Now, Mike did one across the way here on the corner, and that's a piece that we use direct chemistry. I call it direct chemistry to the photographic paper, where we take and we paint the developer right on the paper to get these images, or we slip it into the developer at different rate of speed, and we can create these luscious kinds of images very quickly when you're working that way, because all you have to do is see what the developer is doing, yank it out of there and throw it in the fixer to stop the action. This one right here is the one Will Barber did. He has taken it to the computer where he's played with it color. And it's called the Ghost Riders under
Yeah.
Will, what's the name?
Oh, under the Aurora.
Under the Aurora, but
Since I'm from Alaska.
but this is a good example of how you can take the image to color with the computer. So anyway, he's got 3 pieces in the show. Most of my students have 3 pieces in the show. Let's move on down the hall. I was gonna talk about a couple of other processes down here. Okay, I'm going to give you different examples of what can be done with this process and a little bit about it. This piece right here is a one-of-a-kind piece, and it's what we made with what we call a hard resist. I think it was spray paint on the just Rust-Oleum on the surface of the paper, and then Kyle took and etched these lines everywhere. You see a line going here with an X-Acto, just enough to break through the paint so that the first solutions can get in there and start to work. As they work back and forth between developer and fixer, you're starting to get this binary thing of black, white, black, white. And you'll see that in a lot of these images. Let's move down to this one right here, this big one. Okay, this piece right here, this large piece, is by David Laws. I thought he might be able to make it today, but anyway, what he did was he took one of his images, he scanned it in, and then he took it to a printer, David Staley, down in Midtown, and he had him enlarge it. So when you take something small and you enlarge it, you're going to create a whole different kind of feeling to the piece. And also the color was there. All he had to do was intensify it just maybe a little bit in Photoshop. But these little dots, these little circular things here, we played with bubble wrap to get those.
Wow.
Cool.
So this is a good example of using objects to implant some kind of impression in the floor wax. What you have to do is wait till it gets good and sticky and then push it in there and put a book on it or something, let it sit for a while and then pull it off. And then you can let it dry and process it and develop or fixer. Now if we start in the fixer first, of course the whites are going to come up first and the silver is going to be taken out by the fixer. And then you put it in the developer and you get the blacks start to come in. So it's really kind of exciting that way because you can see things happening right before your eyes and you don't know if you should leave it a little longer or pull it out now.
Yeah.
Big mystery there, you know.
Right.
And then you just, oh, I should have done that. I'll try to tell you which ones are original Chemigrams. This one, of course, is a computer enlarger. So, he's taking it on up. But you get this you can see how you get this really rich detail in the textures. This piece here is an original print made with tape. And it's called herringbone. And you can see how the solutions can get in the tape and under the tape and work around and create this richness that's in there. Now, she could take and scan this in and take it up really large. And how would that be? Could be pretty stunning. Okay. This is a tape piece here. This was torn tape, and he's placed the torn tape on the photo paper and just let it, kind of arrange it so it was felt like it was organized a little bit, and then started to process the paper. This is one of my pieces that I used a hard resist with. I used Solubar, which is a varnish for acrylic paintings that I mixed with 50% mineral spirits. And I just painted the varnish on here. Then I started etching little lines in it that I traced off on the back. I got an example here. See, this is the image here. This is a sandstone formation over in Utah there's these three figures that I used to make a tracing lightly on the photo paper. And then I placed it in the developer, or I painted on the varnish first, let that dry. Then I started making my little cuts with the X-Acto tool that I knew would render it black and white, black and white. And you can see where the little things are popping out here, and each one of those black, white is a cycle back and forth. And these things are time intensive. Believe me, 10 minutes all day long, you're taking it back and forth. Yeah, I've got some other things here to show you too, but let's move on down the hall. Sometimes when you're working and you're just trying a lot of different things, some happy accident happens like this. This is an original Chemigram here. And I don't know, I can't remember this right now just how I made that. I was just goofing off, I think, and I spilled some on there, and I took the puddle pusher and went across it. And I go, oh my goodness. But I didn't know what I had until I processed it, because the floor finish is really clear, and you can't see really what's going on there sometimes. I've discovered a way, though, to make it so that you can see it, and that's put 1 drop of Rapidograph ink in 15 mils of floor finish. I've also just recently taken a jelly print and pulled it into a Chemigram so that it looks like something like this. And I'm not going to get into this right now, but this is another example of the hard resist. And what I did with this to make sure that the chemistry didn't go in from the back and pollute the image on the front, which it can easily do if you're in solution a long time, is this is a piece of RC photo paper just dry mounted on the back so that it creates an impenetrable barrier so that it will not silk in from the back. So you can get these really concentric rings show up very prominently. Okay. Onward. Let's see if I covered everything. Let's see. Happy accident. Let's see. And that's a lot of what this is. You just have to play. I mean, when I'm in my creative space down in Reno, I just put out 4 sheets of paper. I tape them down well. I found out that it's better to tape them all the way around, because if I don't, sometimes the floor finish gets underneath and it sticks to the glass. And so if I tape it down all the way around, just into the print about 1/8 of an inch wide, it keeps that solution from getting underneath. This particular piece is a combination of 2 different processes. And if you take photo paper and you put objects on it, take it out in the sunlight, you'll get an image. You can process it up. It's called a lumen. And just by laying objects on the paper and taking it out and putting it in the sun for about 5 minutes, it'll start to show. And then it will be washed out a lot by the fixer, but there will be a very faint image on there. So it gives you a good background for some things that you might want to make. This is a piece by Nancy Raven. This one, I think, is Vanessa here?
Vanessa's in there.
Oh.
Here, Nolan.
Oh, Vanessa made this one. We were talking about this earlier. Was this cut tape?
Yeah, the blue masking tape.
You just cut the tape and put it on the paper, and then okay. And so she built up this range of different effects with just blue tape, and then processed it going back and forth from developer and fixer. Now I might add that you don't need a darkroom to do this process. This is not. Pierre Cordier gets really upset when you say you need a darkroom to do this process. He says, when I stated it, it says do these under open light. And so anybody could do these if you had a little kitchen sink or something, get some Deckdahl developer and some Kodak fixer, which I think they're still making that. And it's fairly benign chemistry. I mean, I don't think I'd drink it or anything. But put some protection on your hands if you're going to be sloshing around in it, because like rubber gloves. Just have some fun. I usually do a rinse between cycles when it goes from developer to fixer. I always go into, I have a big tub of water, I just put it in there and get the bulk of the chemistry off that solution before I put it in the next one. So you have 3 tubs there. You have the developer, wash, and then fixer. And then when you're all finished, you wash them for about 30 minutes and hang them up to dry. So let's go in here and then we'll finish up. Okay, the Chemigrams. This particular process is one that we tried the last day in the workshop upstairs, but we always did it by an open window, because what you're doing here is you're taking was this polyurethane? Is Mike here? Is this polyurethane?
It is.
So what you do is you have to paint polyurethane on a sheet of photo paper, and while it's still wet, you go into the developer and fixer and cycle it back and forth. And that creates a huge mess. So I always use it the very last thing in the workshop. But you can get these incredible patterns because it does it. I don't know how this works, but things start to bubble up and spread out, and it creates these beautiful kind of patterns. So I call this the wet and wet Chemigram process. I don't make too many of these because the reason I went with the floor wax in the first place was it was non-toxic. And Pierre Cordier had been dabbling with the paint and the varnish and that for years, and his health is finally starting to fail some from doing that. But he was real careful too. But when you're around that toxic stuff a lot, so I always try to go the non-toxic route with it. And Pledge was one of the first, what we called Future became Pledge floor finish. So you have to make sure it says acrylic on the label. It's got acrylic in it. Mop and Glow is one. Quick Shine is one that you get at the store. Bona makes a really good one that you do bathroom tile covering with. It's acrylic. And also my very favorite, which is First Street Super Acrylic. And it's really pretty cheap by the gallon. It's only about $10 for the whole gallon. I still got the first gallon I bought. But it does a remarkable job. And it's a little more tenacious. It hangs onto the photo paper a little longer. And I can get actually 4 cycles out of it rather than 3 or 2. Some of these want to come off real fast, and you got to get them back and forth between the solutions. So this is a good example that Mike made of the wet and wet process. This piece back on this side here, David Laws, I thought I saw him down the hall. There he is. I'm talking about your work here.
Oh my gosh, okay. Hi, everybody.
You're so
Glad you can make it.
This is David Laws, and this piece back here on the wall is what I call a direct chemistry, where we're using just the developer and fixer to create the image. It's more like painting with the chemistry, but by sliding your photo paper in and you're moving it around, just slipping it in slowly and letting the black start to come in, and then hurriedly put it into the fixer to stop that action. Usually when we do that process, I have a stop bath though in between the two, because you want to stop the action immediately. But I've seen some students make some beautiful, we had a session where we went down to the darkroom down the hall here, and we would make these stakes, and I called it crappy paper because I didn't know where it came from, and it was really good doing its thing, but it was really old paper. And so the only thing I could call it was crappy paper, and I started making acronyms for each paper, and also so that you could write that on the back, know what photo paper did it and what the Mop and Glow or Pledge or whatever, and the temperature at 65 degrees and 33% humidity is that, and below is your best working temperature and environment for making things. You can make them at any, you can make them, quick shine's the best one when you got warmer temperatures. Believe me,
Have you written a book, Nolan, on all this? I think you need to write a book next while you're recovering from your knee surgery.
Yeah.
Let's see, write a book.
A short book.
A
Right.
pamphlet.
Right now, I'm working with a writer in New York City. He's doing a monograph of my life's work, and it's kind of exciting. I'm getting them out slowly, and he takes forever to get them done, but I'm patiently waiting for part 4, which will come out pretty soon. But it talks a lot about my process and how I develop things over the years. And so, anyway, are there any questions?
Some have very muted colors, some have very vivid colors, some are black and white. How is color accomplished?
That one is natural. That's an original print. So that is what the color of the paper was when we finished it.
So it depends on the paper, not
Yeah.
on the chemical?
Yeah, there's so much that depends on the surface of the paper. Kodak made so many surfaces. They made an R surface, a J surface, a G surface, and an F surface. And every one of those surfaces will deliver a different effect. And also each one of the different acrylics, floor finishes I talked about will deliver a different effect.
Okay.
So you got all these little tools you can play with there. Erica did this one back in the corner. I kind of like it. I call it cloaked because there's a butterfly in there. If you can see it, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit of a hidden feature in the works there. Okay, that about wraps it up, I think.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Very interesting.
One more thing. You said before that you can inscribe. What do you use to inscribe the chemigrams? Any tool, a knife?
Just X-Acto.
Okay.
And you don't want to get heavy with it and cut through the paper.
Right.
You just want to cut through the paint that's on the surface of the paper.
Right.
I can see I'm going to have to do another workshop sometime.
Yes.
How did the resist come off? So it sounds like the flow wax just comes off, but paint, you said you're using.
Paint will come off and flake off in the solution. So then you have to strain it out, and that's just part of the process. I've got some information down there, some of you who have been my students before, that you can actually take, and this is just recently that I discovered, you can paint on a piece of photo paper with acrylic, say black paint, like painters use. Let it dry overnight, and then put it in the fixer for just 30 seconds to take out the whites, and then you can take and put it in the developer. And the amazing thing is the developer replaces the acrylic black ink with black metallic silver. Exactly. You see it raise and lift off the paper. And there it is.
Oh, wow.
So there's all kinds of little secrets here that I've tried to share in one of the handouts down there. Another one is you can take single weight photo paper, the silver base paper, and run it through your laser printer. And then you can do the chemigram on top of that, which I have a couple of examples right here. Looks something like this. So you can get more abstracted, but there is a tree in there, but maybe you can't see it so well from a distance. But this was made from a print. You do have a dot pattern when you run it through a laser jet printer, but when you process it up in the developer and fixer, then you have the acrylic floor finish painted in there, it gives you this range of textures. So, sky's the limit with this stuff. I probably haven't even started with new ideas that you can do. And it's all pretty cheap to do. If you want to buy photo paper, you can go on eBay and you type in vintage Kodak photographic paper, and you'll come up with a whole bunch of them. Almost any of them will work just fine, but you'll get varying effects depending on what you use, what kind of surface you get. Okay. It's been fun.
And,
Thank you.